And one of the best parts of my job every year is when we get to welcome these remarkable people from our beautiful game as they come to visit us here in Springfield at the Hall. Thank you all so much for joining us today on this muggy day. I hope you're having a wonderful time, and we're delighted to have you join us for today's conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about our special guest who joins us today for our Legends of the Game presentation, a part of the 60 Days of Summer here at the Hall. This Missouri native led his high school team to back-to-back state championships before becoming a truly historic career at the University of North Carolina. He was a four-time first-team All-America selection. He won virtually every collegiate award that exists in 2008, while helping lead his Tar Heels to the national championship. Drafted in the first round by the Indiana Pacers, he played in the NBA for 7 years before beginning a successful career playing in China. He's one of the hardest working players in the game. He had his number retired in Carolina, and he joins us today on center court. Please join me in welcoming today's special guest, Mr. Tyler Hansbrough. Welcome to center court. Have him, grab him. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for coming up.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, a joy to have you with us. So let's begin in Missouri, if we could. Poplar Bluffs. Is that where when did you first start to play basketball and before you get to high school and the success you had there?
Yeah, I started playing basketball at a very young age. My dad and a group of his friends used to go to the community gym. They'd all play pickup, and I wasn't really big enough to dribble the ball or move around a little bit, but I watched them, and then I kept going to the gym, and then eventually, you know, as kids, we kind of got a group together, and we started playing in the playgrounds, and then every day kind of got to where we were playing after school on the playground. Then I started going to camps, working on my game, and I just fell in love with basketball, and you know, I had a lot of good experiences with
Did you play other sports as well?
Yes, I did. My dad was a track athlete at Missouri, University of Missouri. He was a high jumper. I tried to high jump for a little bit. I wasn't as good as my dad. So whenever I got to high school, I strictly started playing basketball.
I know you're very close to your family, your brothers, and you had a very close relationship. Were you all involved in sports together at the same time?
Oh, yeah. My younger brother, Ben, played with me for a year when I was with the Pacers, and my older brother, Greg, we all grew up playing in the backyard, playground, or wherever, and we had many physical games. You know, I got the pleasure to play with both of them in high school, so it was great. You know, obviously Ben went on to Notre Dame and had a very successful career, but growing up, there was always competition between me and my brothers, and even my dad would get in there, and you know, it was fun.
Every Ben, my son's name is Ben. I love Bens. They're great people. Tell me, when you got to high school, had you started to grow? Had you had your growth spurt? Were you already starting to compete on a pretty high level?
I got my growth spurt in between my 8th and 9th grade year. I grew probably 4 or 5 inches in probably 3 or 4 months, just kind of out of nowhere. And so my 9th grade year, I was probably 6'6", and I was lucky to weigh 185 pounds. And so I'd always kind of been a guard up until that point. And then I started, you know, getting used to, you know, physical style and playing. But I was very skinny. And being from a small town, we didn't have guys that had a lot of height or, you know, a lot of basketball talent coming from Poplar Bluff. You know, we're in the middle of nowhere in Missouri. But we had a lot of talent those years when I was in high school, especially with me and my brother. We had a couple football players that came out. Also, my best friend, who happened to be, he was probably 6'8", probably 245 pounds. So you had us two inside. So we were a great team. We had talent those years I was there. So it was good.
Who was your high school coach?
John David Botello. He was a very tough coach. He ran us a lot, hard nosed. We had practice at, I would say, 5:30 in the morning, and then we'd sometimes have practice after. It's just the way we did it in Poplar Bluff. and we all got better for it. I know nowadays a lot of kids don't really like to get up at the crack of dawn, and especially be moving in the gym. But we worked, and that's where I got a lot of my, my blue collarness from, is from my hometown and my high school coach. So that's where it came from.
I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, we will be happy to involve some of you folks in our conversation in a little while. So if you have a question for Mr. Hansbrough, please start to put it in your HUD, and we'll come back to you in a little bit later. In high school, you're just a kid playing high school ball, obviously, and this is a very special team. When did you start to sense, there might be something more for me here? There's maybe college scholarship, or maybe there's something more here than just a game I love to play.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought I was in too small of a town to really get the recognition if I ever got good enough that I deserved. And my freshman year, I was lucky enough, I worked hard enough, I earned it. I played on my varsity team, and Coach Patel was a very tough coach, so he made me work for everything. So as a freshman, I started on the varsity team and started getting a little bit better, working on my game. And then by the time my sophomore year came around, I started playing AAU, going to different camps. Then I started getting, Missouri started recruiting me, Southern Illinois started recruiting me. And then after that, after my sophomore year, my high school coach came to me and said, hey, I got a call from North Carolina. And my eyes just got really big. And that's when I knew I was getting a lot better. It was actually from Jared Hass, who's the head coach at Stanford right now, who called my high school and was asking questions about me. And that's when I knew I was doing something right.
And when did you in between winning back-to-back state championships, did you start to take college visits? Was North Carolina right away a special stop on that process for you?
Well, initially, I grew up a Missouri Tiger fan. All my family went to Missouri. I'm a hometown kid. I pulled for the Tigers my whole life. My dad used to take us to the border game, which was an Illinois-Missouri game in St. Louis every year. And so I always looked forward to that. And so some things happened at Missouri that kind of turned me away from them. And then Coach Williams started recruiting me. And once I got to know Coach Williams and his staff, especially Coach Holliday, who I formed a special bond with, I really trusted those guys, and I felt like there was not a better coach that I could play for. And turns out that I was right on that too. He's one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and I was lucky to play for him. But our high school team growing up, winning those back-to-back state championships was a huge deal for my hometown. Its population probably 15, 17,000. So we were a bunch of country kids from the middle of nowhere, and not a lot of people have heard about us, and we didn't have a rich tradition in basketball. So for us to go back-to-back state championships was huge. And my senior year was against a team that had a lot of national recognition called Vashon, who has a rich history of having very good basketball players. And so it was a clash of a small town versus a big city school.
David and Goliath, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of talent, and we worked hard for those state championships. So those are some of the most important games, or some of the most prideful moments in my career, winning those state champions.
You go from a small school with not a rich basketball tradition, to a college, a university with as rich a basketball tradition as exists in the world. Was that intimidating for a young man from Missouri, from the middle of nowhere, you describe it, to walk onto the campus in North Carolina and say, wow, I'm going to compete on this national level at this beautiful school?
Yes, it was for me. The fact that I was leaving the state and going to school in North Carolina, which I considered, very far away from my hometown, and I'm a homebody, which makes sense. I played in China last year, so. No, when I first stepped foot on North Carolina, I was lucky to have great teammates. Danny Green, Marcus Ginyard, Bobby Frazier, Mike Copeland, all those guys. We gelled right from the get, and we worked that summer really hard, really worked on our game. But getting to campus and then coming from my high school to North Carolina and then walking around campus, I remember I used to call my mom. I used to have her try to Google where I was because I was lost because I didn't want to ask other students for directions. But no, it was a great experience, and I wouldn't change anything.
No, but as a freshman at this great program, you led your team in scoring, in rebounding, in your field goal percentage, and in steals. I mean, you were dominating this wonderful team on a national level. Was this hard work? Were you saying, man, it's all coming together for me? Was it your teammates? What was clicking for you? That's remarkable.
Well, it was kind of lucky. Most freshmen that coming in, especially in North Carolina, Sean May was there the year before. Marvin Williams was the year before. They both left early for the draft. And so it left a big opportunity for me to come in and right away play big minutes and have a big impact on the game. So the combination of that and also working hard, working with our strength coach, Jonas Suration, every day in the summer, whether it's me and Bobby actually got up sometimes at 6 a.m. and went to the gym and shot. That is a combination of all those things and staying healthy that kind of worked out. And also, I think one thing with that group was everyone had kind of written us off before the year, and we had something to prove. Last year, the prior year, they just won the whole thing. And so coming in, not many people had expectations of us except for ourselves. And so we went out and tried to prove people wrong every night.
Well, you mentioned when you were in high school, you were 185 pounds, you had grown, but you became a very physical player in college. You played inside. You played kind of now an old-fashioned game, a power forward game. When did you start? Was that hard work, developing your body, developing your eating habits, developing who you were in your game to be able to take that physical play even before you got to the NBA?
Yeah, for me it started after my sophomore year in high school. I was getting banged around a little bit, and I just did some research, and I found this strength coach in St. Louis, and 2-hour drive from Poplar Bluff, and I said I need to get stronger. So I met with this guy, and he taught me about nutrition, taught about eating properly, sleeping, and then so I started eating more and started working out at our high school gym with our strength coach around the high school and started putting on muscle. And the way we play in Poplar Bluff is physical as it is, so I grew up playing physical, and so I've been around it. So having strength and putting in that time and eating right really helped my game.
Well, and through your 4 years at UNC, the team got better and better and better until your senior year, this kind of magic year for you and for the team came together. Most of us will never, of course, have the experience of playing for a championship team, let alone an NCAA championship team. I was lucky enough to be at that game. What was that whole experience like for you, going to the Final Four and eventually winning the national championship?
Yeah, it was great. Remember in San Antonio, my junior year was the first Final Four. We came out and we got stomped by Kansas. And it was a great experience looking back because not losing the game, but the way we handled it in the off season, getting our mind right, prepping, lifting, motivation, everything in the off season, and then kind of remembering that feeling for the next year when we went to the Final Four in Detroit, played Villanova, then we played Michigan State and won it. So that was a huge deal. Both those Final Fours, obviously I like Detroit a little bit better, but both of those had big roles in obviously winning a national championship.
And when you remember Ty Lawson or Danny Green, Wayne Ellington, some of these teammates, you guys stay in touch with? There a special bond you guys were developing along the way?
There is a special bond, especially with Danny, who I lived with in college a few years, and Ty played in China, so it was good to see Ty. Wayne just signed with the Knicks, so we all keep up. Even if we don't talk to each other, that long, there's always that bond, and so we'll always have that, hey, how you doing? Kind of that family feeling when we see each other. It's like that with the guys who don't even play in the NBA. So talk to a lot of guys I played with that went on and did different things after the time at UNC.
You mentioned Coach Williams, who, of course, we're lucky enough to know, a Hall of Fame coach, Roy Williams, one of the most remarkable, upbeat, charming, smart, wonderful guys I've had a chance to meet. What was he like as a coach? What was he like in your life?
It was perfect for me. One thing I loved about Coach Williams is the way he worked and the way he carried himself. One of the most honest people I've ever met. I knew when I was going into practice that Coach Williams was going to go in there and work just as hard as we did. There's not a thing that he didn't tell me that wasn't true. And so to this day, I think any former player can call Coach Williams and talk to him about something if they need advice or they just need to talk. And I don't see that much with a lot of coaches in college.
Well, of course, you come out of college, come out of this great program, and a great conference. You held a league scoring record, I know in the ACC, which is pretty remarkable. Think of all the great players have gone through that conference. And then the NBA draft rolls along, and you're drafted by the Pacers in the first round. What was the process like? Draft night, the whole thing, waiting for your name to be called. What did that feel like?
Oh, it was great. I had a table in the green room, which is where they have a lot of top picks. If you don't know, a lot of top picks sit at the table and wait for their name to be called. It's also nerve-wracking because you see some guys slip, and so I didn't want to be a guy waiting there all night. But I had my family there. I even had Coach Williams there, who I consider family, and there had been some different speculation about where I was going to go. My agent thought I was going to go later, and then Coach Williams, actually, when Indiana came around at 13, Coach Williams looked at me and said, "I think you're going to go here." And my agent was like, No. Then they called my name, and so it was a great feeling, not only for me, but for my family, who's been with me, leading up ever since I was young. To see that moment and be with me at that table meant a lot to me and to them because, they've sacrificed a lot, a lot of things to help me along the way. But preparing for the draft, I dedicated a lot. I put a lot of time into it. You flying, working out for all these different teams. You go through an interview process with teams, and it's weird. Sometimes you think a team likes you, and they don't. And then sometimes you think a team doesn't like you, and it's the opposite feeling. So it's a hectic night for anybody in that. Going through draft night.
Well, you hear your name called, and a nice NBA staff member grabs you and gives you a cap, and suddenly you're out there on the stage hugging the commissioner. And is it all a blur? Do you have a sense of it as it's actually happening to you? You're kind of like, whoa, it's just too much to take in almost.
It was, for me, it was like they call my name, they get drafted, I put on a hat, go take a picture with David Stern, and then it's just like, it's a huge interview process with the media, and I didn't really have time to sit back and enjoy it. It's just like, hey, I'll see my family later here in a couple hours once I'm done with this. But no, after all that, we all celebrated and had a good time.
Well, there's a pretty great Hall of Famer running the Pacers in those days, Mr. Bird. What was your first engagement with Larry Bird?
He's very direct. He called me, congratulated me, and was looking forward to having me on the team, and told me to see me soon. Working for Larry Bird was great. The one thing I respected about Larry was he was at every practice while he was running the team there, and you don't see that a lot in GMs who come to practice and to show you that, hey, I'm putting in the time too. So he was a hard worker. And
another small town guy.
Yeah, very honest person. So it was great to work for him and get to know him a little bit.
When you went through your rookie year, you had your first injuries, really maybe in your career, except for a famous broken nose incident. That must have been a struggle for you after all the hard work and the way you personally attacked the game to go through that and get into the league. Talk a little about that.
Yeah, it was frustrating. I put all this work in my rookie year. I break my shin and I have to sit out a long time. And then I get healthy, and then I go back into play and I get hurt again. I had a concussion, so I had to sit out a whole year, which is very frustrating, going through all that, trying to get right, and trying to figure out what's going on with me. But my second year, I got through that and learned a lot, and made me appreciate the game, and I was hungry. I felt like I had a good second year and continued to play well for the Pacers.
And of course, it's all now a business. You're a professional. It's a whole different level than the college game, a very different world. You went through a coaching change, and Frank Vogel takes over. The team really starts to have some real success. Was Coach Vogel an important part of your development?
Yeah, playing for Coach Vogel was great. He played me, gave me a lot of confidence. Definitely a guy that can come in and give guys confidence and say, hey, I trust in you, play your game. And Vogel was a blue-collar guy, worked hard, and was a really good fit for for the Pacers when I was there.
Yeah, and I was thinking about your career, and that as I was preparing for today, and your career has gone through several of the real changes in the way the game is today in the world. Some positive, some not so positive in different ways. Your game was this power inside game. You weren't a three-point shooting stretch four in a kind of modern sense. Did you feel the game changing around you? Did you feel like, what I do is just different, and I have to fight harder to find my way in the game?
Yeah, the game has definitely changed. I think the change started to happen probably after my second year in the NBA. I think some people say it maybe a little earlier. Coaches really wanted guys to shoot threes. But for me, I just tried to add value whenever I'm on the court. I'm a good rebounder, so I try to get rebounds and do what I could. Optimistic scorer, so whenever I get the chance, score, put myself in good scoring positions. No, I'm not a traditional three-point shooter, but I feel like I could shoot the mid-range pretty well. So I did that at times. But for me, I was just trying to add value to the team, whether it's, play great defense, get rebounds, do whatever I could.
You mentioned rebounding. You were a really good rebounder. Was that a skill? Was that work? What made you such an effective rebounder? I've often wondered about it. Is it technique, or is it a sense of where the ball's going to go? Rodman always talked about knowing where the ball was going to go before it went there. What made it work for you?
For me, it was a want-to, just trying to, like Rodman said, trying to know where the ball is going to go, but also positioning. Make sure you're getting good position, in front of your guy, or just always give yourself a chance. Hover around, where long shots tend to come off, long shots, long rebounds. So I try to time those and things like that.
As the game has changed, though, it's also opened up globally all around the world. Wonderful opportunities for a lot of guys to make a living playing this beautiful game, and you've taken advantage of that. You've been in China now for a couple of years. That's a major change. That's a major lifestyle change, etc., for a guy from Missouri. What's it been like playing in China?
Yeah, definitely going from a town of 17,000 to a town of 17 million was a big change for me. But it was good. I enjoyed going over to China. I was an important part of the team. They ran a lot of things through me in the offense, so it was a good opportunity for me to go out there and kind of prove myself, and to know that I could get up and down the court and play real well, and score the ball and do different things besides just get on the court and be a screener and rebounder. So that's a part that I really liked about China. It was really good. Besides, the culture, the food, and everything being different.
I read somewhere that you ate a lot of pizza after a while.
Yeah, if I could find a Papa John's. They have Papa John's in China, which Papa John's pizza in China is pretty good. It was a lot of pizza, but they took care of us. They got us good food, and had some friends that came over and visited, so it was great. Yeah,
I will mention again, I mentioned if folks have a question for Mr. Hansbrough, we want to include you. So if you'd please raise your hand, one of our staff members will come and take you over here, and we'll invite you to ask your questions in just a couple of minutes, so stand by for that. You clearly, a critical part of your game and how you've lived was hard work and working on your game and learning how to eat and learning how to take care of yourself. Can you share with some of the young folks who might be listening today something about that discipline and what it means to eat right and to work hard every day in the gym?
Yeah, so, not every kid's going to, have, especially young kids, you're not going to have a lot of, you're not going to spend a lot of time in the weight room because you're pretty young, and it's hard to eat right when you're that young and you're on the go all the time. But one thing I would say, discipline, when you're working on your game and doing a lot of different things and you're putting in a lot of work into it, sometimes those adjustments take a while. So, as old saying, Rome wasn't built in a night, but they worked on it every day. So I would say, keep working on your game. Don't expect the results to happen, instantly. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but don't get discouraged. That's the one thing that I would have for the discipline.
And one of the other things I've often thought about is to play in a major college program like UNC and to balance that with being a student athlete. It's really hard. I don't know if people understand the balance and how hard that is to really excel at both sides. Can you talk a little about what education meant for you and the classroom and to work on that side of your life?
Yeah, North Carolina is a great academic school. I majored in communications, which is a broad major you can do a lot of different things with. So you know, it was great for me to go to a good school and get a great education. Especially, I was really close with my grandpa growing up, and so he was one of the first people in his family to ever get a college degree. So I used to talk to him a lot about that, and that was something that he always pushed for me, to be well educated and take your studies serious. So growing up, I used to talk to him a lot, and he had a lot of influence on me and the way I approach, you know, my studies, and I took it seriously.
And were you doing podcasts for a while? You're using your communication degree?
Yeah, I put it to work last year. Actually, 2 years ago, me and this guy from Duke named Gerald Henderson, who broke my nose. I don't know if you guys knew it. But we did a podcast. We broke down the UNC and Duke side of basketball games, and we had a lot of fun doing it. Some people ask me, hey, you guys going to get that pod back? And my answer is I would love to. Right now, being in China, and we're both trying to figure things out, it's kind of hard right now. But, you know, hopefully I'll get another podcast up soon and have something for those people that liked our podcast.
And what's the skill level in China at this point? What's the game feel like? We watched a lot of college game, your NBA game here. What's the game like in China?
China's game is very physical. It's probably one of the most physical brands of basketball out there. Personally, I think it was like the NBA back in the 80s. You know, hard fouls and play through things. And I love it. I mean, they have some high talent in China. The basketball in China is on the rise.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah, so it's growing. They have a huge fan base. And so, you know, it's great going into different arenas and seeing different parts of China, but also, you know, see the fans and you see the good players in China and the support. It's a great league to play in.
I should mention to everybody that this is going to be shown live on YouTube Live, and if you want to go home and watch today's interview on YouTube when you get home, please do so. And why don't I have our first question come over here, and please tell us your name and your question for Mr. Hansbrough.
Hi, my name is Daryl. My question is, who gave you your nickname in college, and how did you get that, and what you thought of it?
Who gave me my nickname? It came from our head strength coach at UNC, Jonas Saration. I was a very quiet kid my freshman year, and we used to get real loud in the weight room, so one day I just started screaming, goofing around, and he called me Psycho T, which is the nickname he gave me, and everyone loved it. Everyone started calling me that, and some of my former teammates still call me Psycho. But no, I didn't mind it growing up in college. It was fun. Still sometimes I see some interesting interactions with fans. But no, I didn't mind the nickname. Liked it. But my strength coach, he doesn't call me Psycho anymore. He calls me T-Bone or T, because he feels like Psycho T is going too mainstream for him. Yeah. So,
Thanks for your question. Sure. Come on over. Again, please, your name and your question for Mr. Hansbrough.
Tyler, nice to meet you. My name is Mike Clark. I had one question. Actually, how are you with compliments? Because I want to say that one of the things that I admire most about you is the fact that you're humble. You've stayed humble throughout all the accolades in high school, in college. I think it's really admirable, the fact that you've stayed humble and your class is unwavering. With that being said, I think you would make an outstanding coach. So my question to you is, what are your feelings towards coaching?
well, I appreciate the compliments. It means a lot. For me right now, I never thought I would coach. Maybe later down the road. It's something that I just felt like I didn't want to deal with. But now that I'm getting towards the end of my career, it's maybe something that I look into, see what the opportunities are. I've got some really good friends and old teammates, Wes Miller, Bobby Frazier, who are started coaching, and so I talk to them a lot. But it'd be interesting to see where my interest is in coaching after I'm done playing. But right now, it's hard for me to see that. But I wouldn't say it's out of the picture.
Thanks for your question. Come on over. Please give us your name and your question for Mr. Hansbrough.
My name is Jason, and my question is, what was your favorite part about being in the NBA?
Thanks, Jason. My favorite part about being in the NBA, probably for me, it was a dream come true. All that work growing up, something that I've always dreamed about and put a lot of time into. But for me, playing the NBA is playing basketball at the highest stage. And probably my favorite moment was when my brother was on the Pacers, because I saw him put a lot of work in, and we grew up from a town where a lot of people didn't think it was possible to play in the NBA. They just thought it was some foolish idea, but we put the time in, work, and we saw it come true, and so that meant a lot to me.
Was there anyone that you played against in the NBA on such a high level that you particularly had challenges playing against? You said, man, I'm not looking forward to playing against him.
Well, there's a few guys. Chris Bosh started, if he got going, got hot, especially when he was with Toronto, he was an issue. Zach Randolph, if he got his outside shot going, felt like he was impossible to guard in his prime.
Yeah.
So those guys, but I grew up, I've always been a big Steve Nash fan, so playing against him and seeing him play, that was pretty cool.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. Come on over. Please give us your name and tell us your question for Mr. Hansbrough, a Celtics fan.
My name is Jack, and what was the toughest time of your part in the NBA, and how'd you persevere through it?
Thank you. My toughest time in the NBA was my rookie year when I went through some injuries. I got healthy, then I got injured again, and it was so frustrating. I felt like at one point I wouldn't be able to play basketball again, especially with the concussion. I was thinking all sorts of things, but talking to my family and stepping away from the game for a little bit really helped me and tried to get me through that. And then I started working in and got back into shape. And then my second year, which I felt like I had a very good year, that's when kind of helped me get through everything.
Thanks, Jack. Of course, your Pacers, you drafted Kawhi Leonard, I think, and then traded him on draft day, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah, that might have turned out differently if...
Yeah, they probably wouldn't trade him now.
Exactly. Hi, how are you? Your name, please, and your question for Mr. Hansbrough.
My name is Nathaniel Costley. I'm from Westminster, Maryland. Tyler, I remember when you broke your nose. I'm a big Duke fan, although I do respect Carolina and your work ethic, right? I've been coaching for about 15 years, and I've been trying to get into professional coaching. How would you encourage or recommend somebody to get into that field or that arena? I know that you said earlier you had some friends, and also coming from a small market, we have 2 kids, and I'm not saying it because he's my son, but it's his birthday and he's the next Greek freak. Watch out, I'm telling you. He's 9 years old and he's bad.
The next Greek freak, that's pretty good.
That's Maury,
There you go.
Kids shot 5 times like you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, man. To answer your question, how do you get involved in coaching? If you were asked me, I would think it'd probably be volunteering. Going out there, getting in camps, meeting people, and whether it's UConn right up the road, see if you can help out some of their camps and get connections. But that would be that. What was the second question?
The second part was for the younger kids, from a small market, right? Because I know everybody thinks AAU is always the answer.
Yeah.
I'm not a big proponent of it, but how would you recommend young kids today getting some exposure without necessarily going on the AAU circuit?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm from a small town. Closest airport is actually 2.5 hours away. So, I went through that thought process growing up. I felt like I had to go to St. Louis or nobody would ever find me. Listen, if you're good enough, they're going to find you. I know UConn's right up the road, so that's pretty close. You get them recruiting you and you get other people starting interested in you, you're going to catch, people are going to start hearing about you. But if I had one piece of advice, I would be, work every day. You put your game together and you get good enough, then that's going to take care of everything else.
Thank you, sir. Sure.
Thank you.
Come on over, sir. Please give us your name and your question for Mr. Hansbrough.
Hey, my name is Kenya Sullivan. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. One question. How many times did you win versus Duke?
Well, we went undefeated at Cameron, so that was big. Never lost at Cameron.
Okay.
They beat us twice, so that would have been, 6 and 8. So
Oh, you 6 and 8?
yeah,
Versus
so
Duke?
Pretty good.
yes, sir.
Told told you. He a Carolina fan.
That's
Okay.
good.
You right here, we Duke fan, my son. So we just.
Yeah, we got the best of Duke. So yeah.
Yeah.
You had some great teammates on those Pacers teams. I think of Danny Granger and Roy Hibbert and some other wonderful players. Anyone who especially, as you think back of your pro career, who was especially a great teammate for you?
I was lucky enough to have great teammates. I would say Jeff Foster was a vet when I got to Indiana. You guys, some of you might not know who he is, but he was one of the best rebounders and defenders I've ever played with. He'd been in the league for a while. He was a vet. He used to give me advice. We had lockers close by. I felt like he's a very good guy too. So he used to always talk to me a little bit and try to help me out with some things. But also I played with Roy Hibbert.
Yeah.
Me and Roy were close when I played with Indiana.
Paul George, and so many great
Yeah, I
players
was
on those
lucky enough
teams.
to play with Paul George. He's one of the most talented guys I've ever played with. Unbelievable. And then when I got to Toronto, I played with DeMar DeRozan, who's one of the hardest workers I've been around. And to see him work was special. And also, you guys played with Kemba, who the Celtics just got. He's a hard worker, and he's a great teammate, too. So you guys will like him.
Well, I think we'd like him, and we're looking forward to meeting him. But mostly, I want to thank you for joining us today. Folks, we're going to have an autograph session over here to my right. So before we do that, please, again, one more round of applause for our special guest.
Thank you.
Mr. Tyler Hansbrough. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Jason for, we're going to line up over here, folks, if we could. Remember, folks, we're going to try to line up one autograph. Thank you. Try to, no photos if we